Hi, let's join Fred Coon now for another in-depth interview.
Welcome, everybody. Glad you could join us. Our topic today is the value of hiring military leader retirees in civilian society. Very important for many, many reasons. And to tell us about this is Jason Roncoroni. Jason is a retired lieutenant colonel, former battalion commander in the U.S. Army, 21 years of active duty service, 33 months deployed in Afghanistan, and graduate of the Military Academy at West Point. Jason, welcome to the program.
Hey, thank you very much for having me today, Fred.
The issue is, why should civilian companies hire retired or military leadership?
Well, thank you. And I think that that's a lot of the common theme that you hear across different industries when it comes to hiring senior leaders to take more senior levels of management jobs within a specific industry. And it's true. I can't dispel that rumor that military leaders don't have specific industry experience, but the value that they do provide, and this is what I often think is lost, is that military leaders are conditioned to survive in periods of extreme uncertainty. They're remarkably decisive. They have the ability to really kind of shrug off when they make a mistake, and they have no fear about making a decision when the next challenge arises. And the best way I like to characterize what a military leader can do for a company is that most businesses approach uncertainty in the same way that you would approach, let's say, a 500-piece puzzle, and that you've got a picture or vision of what you want that to inevitably look like. And you follow a set process. Maybe you start with the edges, you kind of work your way through the inside. Maybe you solicit some help from people to help put together this puzzle, which is in essence your strategic plan for how you want to operate. And what makes a military leader distinctive, given the things that they've been doing, whether it's counterinsurgency, whether it's host nation support, whether it's supporting allies in Europe or on the Asian continent, what military leaders have been doing is they've been dealing with 3,000 puzzle pieces and are being asked to make a 500-piece puzzle. And they have no idea what that picture is supposed to look like. But I can guarantee you that they're going to put something together that's typically better than what you could have anticipated in the first place. And that's the intrinsic value that these leaders offer to any business sector.
I've experienced the same thing when I work in military transition on various bases with our team, is that they've been guided with such low expectations about their ability to transfer to very difficult positions. It's a problem for me because I look at all of these valuable, like you said, the 3,000 pieces, and they don't have an idea what it's supposed to look like, and that's their challenge when they run operations in the military. It's an extreme set of competencies.
Yeah, so I left the military twice, Fred, and the first time when I left the military, I did it as a junior captain, and I went through one hiring agency, I went through one career conference. And as a result of that career conference, I had 11 interviews and 6 job offers. And the job that I got was for more than I was making as a junior captain in the Army. Now, you fast forward that to when I was, a lieutenant colonel, and I'm retiring after battalion command, where I have 2 graduate degrees. And all of that leadership experience and all those bona fides to go with it. And I went to 2 hiring conferences and didn't get a single interview. And exactly what you had just talked about with this idea of, hey, you're going to have to manage your expectations and take a step back. That was the mantra that was fed to me. And for a while, quite frankly, I listened to it until I couldn't hear that anymore, until I needed to really kind of break out and say, you know what, I'm worth more than that. And I think that most of our senior military leaders are worth more than that, given their experiences.
Correct.
And I even believe that the next generation of leaders are going to be worth more because, again, they're going to have it harder than we did.
Yeah. And one of the things that I've seen in just talking with the senior leadership is they don't understand how to translate all of those competencies that they have into something that somebody who the screening person for human resources who's 27 years old with no experience in the military whatsoever is looking at their resume and has no clue what some of these acronyms are. They have no idea what's involved in managing those programs, material, machines, people, logistics, all of that. It's a problem that they don't know how to communicate their value proposition.
And I think that's an important point as well, because what we try to do in this process is we try to take the jobs, the things we do, and we try to translate that into a format that is consumable for a human resources function. And I think what gets lost in there are some of the more meaningful intangibles that military leaders offer. And probably the biggest one that I would say to that is this idea that businesses are very results centric, whether it's profit and loss, whether it's quarterly earnings reports, whether it's production output, quality assurance. The thing that military leaders do is that they have this innate skill that's conditioned through their service to enhance the capability and capacity of the people who are actually performing the services for that entity, because it's a skill that they've had to really kind of develop through their course of time in the military, dealing with smaller size units, greater demand for the things that they have to do, and problem sets that there is no manual to solve. So they've had to force themselves to say, okay, I've got to make my people better. And to me, that is the greatest value proposition that they offer to businesses. And the return on investment is not just for that leader in that position, which, again, they operate with a no-fail attitude, but also the fact that they're going to elevate the performance of everybody else who they come into contact with, whether it's colleagues on the business, customers they interact with, and even the competitors.
Absolutely. Let me move to the next question, which this kind of leads into. From the company side, how can a company address this lack of industry experience? How does the company help the company interpret?
That's a great question, Fred. And one of the things I think, when you go into a theater, when you deploy, because we're in this revolving door cycles of deployments for our service members, you go through a process of, reception, staging, and onward integration, essentially the RSOI. And what that does is that process brings you up to speed on everything you need to know to operate in that environment. And I think the same applies to a military leader when they're transitioning from the insulated culture of the military to an aggressive and very distinctive culture in industry. There should be a process of onboarding that's very similar to what we recognize as the RSOI process. And for the more senior leaders, one of the things that I recommend is a form of executive coaching, which is what many industries offer for their executive level leaders to help them really kind of develop their self-awareness, uncover the blind spots, and implement strategies where they can complement the growth in their personal and professional lives. And those are really kind of two things that I would think would help a company really kind of optimize the potential of senior military leaders that are now helping to forward their mission.
That leads to the next question, and that is, how should a senior military leader approach transition to find the right fit, the right job, the right position?
Yeah, I think that fit is probably one of the most important things, because military leaders have proven that they can do almost anything. Every job that they've had, they had to learn the job while they were assigned and responsible for executing that job, whether it was something in combat or something routine or working in the Pentagon. There's really not a lot of preparation or training that leads into those jobs. So I think what it comes down to is really identifying the right fit. And several things that I think military leaders can do is first start with your core. In other words, what you want to do is make sure that you are comfortable and confident in your own sense of values and your own sense of purpose for your own identity and what you look like when you take off that uniform. And once you're able to do that, you can better align your values to the values of an organization. You can better align your sense of purpose and that impact that you want to have with the intended impact of an organization. And I think that's an important thing to do. The second thing is that we are all conditioned through the military service to kind of have certain norms of behavior when it comes to leadership. And over the course of time, we develop blind spots. So having the ability to recognize where those blind spots are and educating yourself on a lot of the nuances that exist in the corporate world can help you to identify those blind spots, so at least you recognize where they are, and then you can develop strategies for how you want to overcome them. And I think really kind of the third thing to do is, as you're going through the transition, is don't rush it. I've made the mistake multiple times of double dipping pay because, I was focused on the salary. And the challenge with that is that you end up paying for that in the long run. Take your time. The transition process is difficult, not just for you, but your entire family. Your family is going through the transition. You've probably banked up your leave time, right? You have that extra time when you sign out of the military before you go to that next job. And so take advantage of that time and go on a vacation with your family. Make sure you've got a good strategy for how your whole family is going to adjust to the transition. And then when you step into that job, you're doing so with a fresh set of eyes and a clear mind that's not cluttered with all the honeymoon period of having accomplished your military service. Those are some of the strategies that I would recommend military leaders as they're starting really the second half of their life.
One thing you said was you got to look like. That's a great phrase, and it's another whole program on how do you translate those core competencies, how do you state them, the metrics, all of those things. So I hope that you will join me again in a discussion about those specific topics of how do you take off that uniform, look in the mirror and say, okay, what is the HR person seeing? What is my new boss seeing? And you're constructing around that. Will you come back and do one on that?
I would love to, Fred. Thank you very much for the offer.
Folks, our guest today has been Jason Roncoroni. Jason's a retired lieutenant colonel, battalion commander, West Point graduate. Go read his bio on the web. You'll get a kick out of it. Thanks very much for joining us. We'll see you soon.
Thanks for joining us. If you wish to speak with Fred or you want a transcript of this interview, send an email to podcast@stewartcoopercoon.com. See you soon.